Hi, Clay from Cyber Safety Cop. I'm here today with Susan Parmelee from the Wellness and Prevention Center. And today we're going to talk about some really important issues happening with teens, especially with alcohol and drug abuse. And specifically, we're going to talk about marijuana right after this. So Susan, thanks for sitting down and chatting with me today. You and I, we've known each other for some time, and we've had the opportunity to work together in the community and addressing issues specifically with marijuana and vaping and kind of drug and alcohol abuse with teens. And you're not just out there educating parents, but you're actually working with students every day. So you really are seeing and getting from them directly what's really going on. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what the Wellness and Prevention Center does, and maybe let's then talk a little bit about marijuana and and how our culture's been changed with regards to marijuana and what it means to teens and everything.
Right. So the Wellness and Prevention Center provides services in the community for education, but we're also located on 8 school campuses now as well, where we get to work with middle school and high school students who maybe have had some issues with marijuana use or mental health, and we really have an eye on what's going on in South County right now. We're seeing marijuana become very normalized, and our youth actually, since we've given it that medicine term, they actually think it's safe. And the trends we're seeing is alcohol use is down. They don't think alcohol use is healthy, but they actually now have a kind of a misunderstanding that marijuana is a safe way to disconnect. A lot of kids talk about they just want to disconnect, or they can't sleep, or all these things that actually the marijuana industry is saying they can help with.
Right.
But it's pretty unsafe use. We're a little shocked with what we're seeing, particularly when kids start using daily, and then we see a lot of their other strengths kind of go away.
So I've heard that term from students. They say marijuana is safer than alcohol.
Right.
But marijuana, maybe you can talk a little bit about introducing. So marijuana is different today.
Right.
Than it was, 30 years ago when maybe today's parent might have seen marijuana, maybe even tried marijuana. What's different about marijuana today, and how does that affect their developing brains?
Well, basically, there's a lot of really good botanists and a lot of really good chemists out there now, and the botanists have genetically modified this plant, especially in the state of California, to the point where the leaf strains are anywhere from 27 to 45% THC. And then we have the chemists who step in, and they use all kinds of chemicals to cook it down to an oil. And that we're seeing go over 90% THC, which isn't healthy for anyone. None of marijuana smoking is particularly healthy, but that's particularly bad. Also because kids are using that in a vaping device, and I know everyone's pretty aware of all the lung injuries we're now seeing with very young individuals, and it's scary.
Right. So you have really high concentrated THC. In fact, when I was a juvenile investigator working on school campuses, I very infrequently saw the leaf form. The majority of things that I saw were oil or the wax or those kind of derivative
right.
THC concentrated forms. So and now that we have vaping, they even have a more efficient delivery device to get that into their system. And what about THC and their developing brains? Because I don't know if a lot of people who are watching this know that in that kind of wonderful time of 13 to 22 when their brain is developing and the prefrontal cortex is developing and those neural connections are being laid down, they're very strong and powerful. They're flooding their brains with high concentrated THC, what does that do to their brains?
So what we know now, and we learned so much about brain science in the early 2000s, and it's pretty fascinating that we now know that those teen years are second in brain development only to baby and toddlerhood. And What we do know is that the THC molecule actually fits in a spot where they really need natural endorphins to fit, and it kind of takes over. And then it stops the positive pathways from growing. So what we see is they really need their prefrontal cortex to develop higher reasoning and to understand logic and more things in the world, and basically it stops a lot of those positive pathways. So that's why we kind of say when a young person starts using a substance, they kind of stop their brain development. And then when they stop using it, if maybe they decide to give it up, they're kind of still stuck back at like 16 when they first started using marijuana. So they don't reach their potential. And that's, I equate it, sometimes I'll tell a family or a child, if you knew you were going to grow 3 more inches in height, but if you smoke pot, it would stop it, would you smoke pot? And the kids pretty unanimously say, oh no, I'd stop. So I like to say, well, your brain needs that 3 inches right now. So we really get scared when we see the kids just kind of, they lose their motivation to even grow into adulthood.
They get stuck.
They get very stuck.
Yeah. And for me, working in law enforcement and seeing the very young people who are coming into custody in the jail, we're seeing a lot of young people with serious mental health issues at a rate that we've never had before. We really have to create like the new state mental health hospital, which is now the county jail.
Right.
And they all have something in common. They all started using drugs at a young age, and marijuana is typically the common denominator. So it is not only is it maybe stunning, their capacity or their potential, but it's also affecting possibly like mental health later in life.
For sure, and we do know there's a very strong connection between the high levels of THC and triggering episodes of psychoses. For some kids, it might be one episode of psychoses. For others, it could be the start of schizophrenia for the rest of their life. So there's usually a genetic disposition. But even then, if you're putting the wrong chemicals in your brain, it's going to take time again for your brain to get the right things blocking in place. And that can lead to some depression and anxiety, especially when you can't access the marijuana that you've been using.
So the vicious circle. So they think if I'm feeling anxious and depressed, I should smoke marijuana because it'll make me feel better.
Right.
But it's really it's the opposite.
It's definitely the opposite. It's a depressant. Yeah. So it may calm you in the moment, but then when you're not smoking it, you're suddenly just going backwards, and you don't know, your brain doesn't have the natural chemicals anymore to fit in the right places and to make you feel better.
Yeah. So if you're a parent watching this, what are the things that would be kind of red flags for parents? What should they be looking for?
Right. You're going to see these signs are pretty much across the board. Substance use, mental health, these are the things you want to watch for. A kid suddenly isolates. A kid changes their friend group. We always, I'm not going to say grades always drop, but grades might not be what they used to be. Some kids are pretty high functioning. They can keep their grades up. And also they're probably going to be, a little more irritable. You're going to see more irritability. And they're going to stop doing things they used to like. So if you have a kid who like to do sports, they're probably going to stop participating in sports. So those are some of the key things you want to watch for. So
when you see it's typical for your kid, and then you start seeing behavior that's kind of going away from what's typical.
Right.
Those are red flags.
Right.
It could be marijuana. It could be other things.
Right.
But that's when a parent knows they need to start.
Either reach out to a professional. You can always ask your pediatrician to run a drug screen. Just ask them to run regular blood work. You probably want to we like to add in a thyroid check as well as a tox screen when they're that age and you're seeing behavior change, because there are other physical things that can do it too. And also you can reach out to a professional. We here at the Wellness and Prevention Center, we field calls from adults all the time, and we can help you start the conversation with your kid if you don't quite know how. And there's a lot of good resources online as well that can help you start a conversation if you're having trouble with it.
So just maybe 1 or 2 ideas for parents if they want to start a conversation, like where should they start, or where should they go with that conversation?
Well, first of all, you never want to ask a kid to lie. So think about it. If you have a 3-year-old and you know they took a cookie out of the cookie jar, you're not going to say, "Did you take a cookie out of the cookie jar?" Because they don't want to be in trouble. So they're going to say, "No, I didn't take a cookie out of the cookie jar." The same holds true with the teen. So you just kind of want to ask open-ended questions. Hey, I'm a little worried about you. You don't seem to hang out. You don't seem to hang out with, your usual friends lately. Is there something going on that you want help with? So you kind of want to keep your questions open-ended. No yes or no, and don't give your kid the opportunity to lie, because then it's just going to escalate into a not very pretty situation.
Yeah. You don't want to put them in a position, where they're lying and then they have to save face, or they're scared if they're found out, then they're really going to dig themselves into that lie, and it's going to be difficult. So, you want that kid to. You want to bring that kid over on your side with regards to this, and not be defensive.
No matter how much you feel like they're pulling away from you, you're still their safe place, and they still want to go. And trust your instincts. If your gut feels like something's wrong, it's usually something's wrong.
There's nothing more definitive than a parent's gut, really.
Right.
I mean, if they think there's something wrong, they need to start digging in and asking questions and reaching out to professionals, their pediatrician. Somebody like you, that's a resource where they can come and get questions answered, they can get resources. It's also a place where students can meet with a trained, licensed professional and talk about what's going on.
Yeah, so we both on the school campus and in our community clinic, we meet with youth, we meet with adults, we meet over the phone. We are a safe place for kids to come and meet with a mental health professional when they want to make change.
So you're here in San Clemente, California, and so if somebody's seeing this somewhere else, anywhere in the United States, but not near here, is there typically like local resources? Like where would be the first place someone should like, talk to the school?
Well, the school may not be the best place to intervene, because you don't necessarily want them to be in trouble at school, but your school counselor should have resources. Also, if you call your health insurance, they usually can tell you how to access a mental health therapist. And we're trained to help families solve problems. That's what we do. You don't necessarily have a mental health diagnosis, but I tell all the teens that I meet with, like, don't you think everyone should get a therapist whenever they want?
Yeah.
So check in with your health insurance. There's resources online that often will then refer you to local resources. There's a lot of ways, but just reach out and also throw your kid the lifeline. Just let them know you're there to answer their questions, and you want to give them support when they're struggling.
And they're only going to know that if that parent opens that door. Right? I mean, it's not, they're going to assume that they're going to get in trouble, or more importantly, the parent will be disappointed.
Right.
And that's why I really encourage parents to look for somebody like you who can talk to their kid. In other words, their child can talk to someone who's not their parent, who they don't have to be worried about disappointing. That's kind of emotionally uninvolved in their lives, but who can give them a real assessment of what's going on and give them some good tools. So I think it's important for kids.
It's really important, and they have a lot of pressures on them, and a lot of things are easily available to them. It's very easy to reach out and get access, and sadly, most school campuses, kids have vaping devices, and
they're everywhere.
It's you can't smell it, hard to detect, and really what you need to watch is the behaviors.
Thanks. Well, I think that's a good start for parents who are wondering about this, and I just encourage parents to find someone in your community like Susan and her organization, and her information is going to be in this post and in her email, etc. So you can reach out and contact them if you need it. So thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Clay.